Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. I'm Bithyah Israel, Social Justice Fellow for the Arts and Humanities at the Urban Ministry. Welcome. And today we're having lunch with an artist. And today we're featuring Christle Rawlins-Jackson. Hi, Christle. Thank you and welcome.
Nice to be here.
So it's going to be an informal get together, just as if we all were sitting around a table with Christle. And we thought we would start by sharing the video that we'll base our conversation on. So thank you to our tech team in the background, Christy and Vinny. So Christy, please share the video.
In Ghana, there is a slave fort probably every 2.5 miles along the coast, which I had no idea before going there, that these slave forts just kind of overcame the entire coast. Some of them, there's just remnants, but there are many that are still standing. And so the first thing that you do when you go there, is you're brought to the slave forts. The first time I went, we were waiting to go into the slave dungeon in Cape Coast Castle. And a group was coming out as we were going in. And some of the people were being literally carried out. They had passed out. There were people who were crying. There were people who had this dazed look on their face, like they had seen something so horrible that they were traumatized. They were in shock. And I didn't want to go in there because of what I saw on the faces of the people that came out. And it's an empty room. There's nothing in there except for the residue of the agony of the people who were put in these dungeons.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? I'm feeling wonderful because I just returned from Africa. I celebrated my 40th birthday in Ghana. It was the first time I'd been away from home and away from my family. And although I missed them, I was just so excited to be back home in the motherland, in the place where all humanity began, and the spirit of women was born. I realized during my visit I had to see the slave forts and castles. I experienced Fort Amsterdam, Shama, the fort at Elmina, and of course, Cape Coast Castle. Once inside the slave castle, I was just blown away. I was overwhelmed with feelings of anger, fear, sadness, but most of all, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of familiarity, like I had been there before. And I knew in that instant that someone in my family had been there. Don't ask me how. I could just feel it, you know? And I knew that all she wanted was to be remembered. All she wanted was to be remembered. I feel a spirit, mighty spirit, take me back, bring me back home, where I can be free, where I can be free. Take me back, I wanna go home. Ooh, ooh. The spirit of women is flying free because they live within me.
I'd love for people to begin the healing. The reality is that we all need each other. And, unfortunately with this, I also blame the media for them always talking about the division, how we're so separated. But if you really look, we're very much together. We need to come together, all of us, because it wasn't just a Black experience. Those people who took part in the slave trade, or whose ancestors took part in the slave trade, they benefited. They are still benefiting. If you don't understand what happened before, how are you going to acknowledge that you are a beneficiary of the slave labor, the lives that were lost, the suffering, if you don't understand it, if you don't know it exists, or that it is related to you? It's such a large issue. But if I can just open the door through my music, through my art, through my poetry, I think I will be somewhat satisfied.
Thank you, Christle, for sharing your work and your message through. So I'd like to first invite Christle to share any words that you have for us.
Well, it's kind of interesting, like hearing yourself.
And as I was telling Bithyah in preparation for this, that I hadn't really seen it since a year ago. But it's making me feel very emotional. It's reminding me of the journey that I went on when I first went to Ghana. And it was very like a spiritual journey, you know, reconnecting with ancestors that I never knew, and then confronting that, you know, horrible history of slavery. And so I know what my journey has been and is, but I want to pose the question as to, well, where do we go from here? You know, how do we move forward and heal? And also have that conversation that turns into some sort of action, because what you saw, the slave forts in the video, they were the foundation that was being laid for the systemic racist system that we are all a part of. And some of us who are the descendants of those slave traders are benefiting from that, as I said in the video. So I'm very much interested in hearing from our audience so that we can have some kind of dialogue about maybe even the struggles of what you may be going through, in order to understand what is your role and what can you do within your community, within your realm.
Thank you, Christle. So at this time, audience members, please feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat. Now, Christle, also please feel free to call on someone, just in case there are a number of hands. So this is our time collectively together.
And I don't know, do you need a moment to just kind of reflect on what it is that you saw? Or I can't really see people, so perhaps you can put something in the chat that says yes or no, or were you not prepared to engage? You were just going to listen?
Yes, please let us know, everyone, what your thoughts are. I guess I will start with myself, I suppose. In response to your question, Christle, what first came to mind, you know, where do we go from here? And I feel like that's such a therapeutic question to ask. For me, I think it's just waking up in the morning and questioning what I believe my role is. I feel like there are some automatic givens that we all sometimes it becomes ingrained in our daily experience. But then, for example, you know, where we place in society in different realms, and just an equalizing of that when I wake up in the morning, just kind of questioning maybe why I think the way I do. That would be a start. So I'll pass it on to anyone who has posted.
Well, Candelaria said that she's flooded with feelings, and I that's how I felt when I went there. I was just, and the poem that you heard is part of several. There are 7 poems. And so one of those things is trying to understand that you could feel angry, sad, and a host of other feelings all at the same time, just by being in that environment. And so I think in our daily lives, it's easy to just get caught up with trying to get to your job, paying your bills, going grocery shopping, without actually being present and understanding that, you know, I don't know if everybody is from the Boston area, but in Boston, most of the buildings, the bricks that you're walking on, they were made, you know, by slave labor. And so I think it's a matter of being more conscious of the environment that we're in, because it's right there speaking to you, but you only have to listen. You have to hear it.
Candelaria, may I
Yeah,
call on you?
sure. Having studied a lot of history, having gone various places, I carry history with me. It's a part of our lot, all of us do. And for me, though, it's like I don't want to sit in the sorrow because that's not helpful or healthy. And it was important for me in high school to learn that Black people weren't the only people who had sorrow. Because for a long time, the way things were taught, it was like there was something about us that was special, that meant we carried sorrow and that we had been enslaved and we had done all this. And then, thinking about Native Americans whose country this was. So for me, the most present thing right now, particularly in this moment with what's the military action that could start another world war, not knowing if, we have the nuclear capability. I'm trying to think of how can I not do harm to other people while acknowledging that I am both harmed by and benefited by history and my particular place in the world. And so that's sort of coloring me sort of every day to make it possible to live, and that we've all shared this pandemic as an experience as a society, and that what you say, we're all connected to this particular history. We're all connected certainly to the continent of Africa, because that's where our origins are from. And it's like, just how do we acknowledge and try to have hope to move forward?
Right.
That's so I'm just flooded with your voice is beautiful, the images were beautiful, the story is beautiful and painful at the same time. So I'm just sort of flooded right now. Thank you though for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, as I said in the video, it's so complex. There's so many layers to it. And I don't have all the answers, but I do know that the first step is to acknowledge, acknowledge what happened and as I said, and heal from that knowledge, because it's been denied for so long, and much of the history here in the Boston area has been, I call it laundered. They laundered, once slavery was over, they laundered the money. Faneuil Hall is a perfect example. Something good, but then it's easy to forget what happened before.
Oh, excuse me. If we can mute, that would be helpful. So are there other questions? I don't want to take over the conversation.
There's other comments here.
I'm Barbara.
Okay, I was just going to read your comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the images and the feelings. Poetry and song they land in a different way along with the images. And two things went through my mind. I'm a scuba diver, and I often used to dive in Bonaire, the islands off the coast of Venezuela. Bonaire was a salt city, and you can see slave huts by the salt processing stations. It's a tourist visit now. And I was struck by the images that you showed of these castles and these horrible dungeons that are tourist visit sites. I'm not going to call them tourist traps because they're not, but it's important to see these things, and it's important to feel the horror, and it's important that people not somehow think, oh, this is pretty, I'll take a picture because the sunset is right and the color is nice.
Right.
And that's what I was watching people do. My own goddaughter had her wedding by the slave huts without thinking about what does this mean? It was just an image. And those slave huts in Bonaire they maybe come up to my waist. You have to crawl into them. They do have a roof. They have one window and one door. There's no covering on either the window or the door. And yes, they'd been painted colors that were indicative of a kind of salt that was mined by the enslaved peoples and processed by the enslaved peoples. But I don't know how, what I'm struggling with is beyond your poetry and song that is so high in impact, how do we create the impact for a broader community to see those images in the reality of what they are?
It brings to mind when my husband and I first were going to Ghana and going to the slave forts. And of course, anytime somebody would come to visit, we'd bring them back to the slave forts. And so the tour guides were completely disconnected from, they didn't see that as an extension of themselves or the history. And so they did the same kind of thing of, let me take your picture, or, telling you the story without having any kind of compassion. And so we went to the head tour person and we told them, this is unacceptable. You need to educate the tour guides to understand that people who come here, it's just like this spiritual journey. They've gone through so much, and such atrocity happened here. You have to be more in tune with that and understand that. And so it has gotten better because of that. And it wasn't taught in school, but now I see they bring school children there, so I say that say something, say that is inappropriate, and demand that they actually include that history, so.
We have a comment from Kathleen. Kathleen, would you like to unmute?
Yes, I hope that my volume is coming through good.
We can hear you.
Okay. A few years ago, I was on a walking pilgrimage, retracing the history of the slave trade in reverse at a pace of 20 miles a day. I walked 25,000 miles from Massachusetts to Cape Town, South Africa. Along the journey, at the slave castles that currently exist, those of us who were on that pilgrimage of African descent entered those castles from the seaside, returning home, our ancestors. And this is a picture of me at the slave castle at Elmina in Ghana, West Africa, climbing the ladder because now the door is like 15 feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I knew of the Middle Passage Project. I wanted to join them, but it didn't work out. And I know the hardship that people went through.
And this is us at, and this is us at Gorway.
I don't think we can see that one.
Thank you, Kathleen, very much.
Yeah.
Okay, that's coming through now.
That was quite a journey. Okay, yes.
And probably a good idea would be for those African descended people who are traveling to West Africa to visit the slave castles, that we enter them from the seaside.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Mhm.
Thank you. Christle, did you have comments?
Oh, I know of the project, and I tried I couldn't get off of work. I don't know, I just couldn't, it wasn't lining up for me to go. It wasn't meant for me to go at that point, I guess. But I know several people who took the journey. And I know it was very, very difficult. I mean, it's just,
Who do you know?
I think Louise Dunlap, I know Sister Claire,
Yeah,
Skip Shield,
yeah.
yeah, quite a few other people who come to mind at the moment.
Yes,
And I was there at the
65 people that traveled through the United States and on that journey. Only 10 people completed that journey.
yeah. But we did the send off. I walked from the museum of the National Center for Afro-American Artists. That's where it started, and then I walked with them.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's good to know. It's good to know different ways to experience the tours also. So thank you, Kathleen.
Mhm.
I wanted to revisit until we have another question or comment from a viewer. I did want to revisit something that Candelaria mentioned in her comment about trying not to do harm and to recognize that some of these atrocities are repeating themselves. And of course, the continuation of what we've seen in the past couple of years in this country also. I'd be curious to pose Christle's question again to the viewers. What are your thoughts and how do we go forward from here? Are there any thoughts that ring true for you? Let's see here. Okay, I'm just reading comments. There was a question asking for a link to be posted in the chat for the Middle Passage that was mentioned, the tour. But yes, we'd really like to hear from viewers. Any thoughts that you would like for us collectively to really ponder together?
I know one of the things that people mention is the reparations, and that brings about a lot of fear. I mean, that's definitely a solution, but then again, the big question is, well, what does that mean? And how do you play that out? You know, is it giving a lump sum to everyone who, I guess, could prove that they were a descendant of slaves, which doesn't really sound feasible. But I would say that maybe reparations takes the form of people having access to a good education, to health care, some of the basic things that may be taken for granted by some, you know, and that has manifested itself. It's shown itself during the pandemic. You know, they keep saying people of color have a greater possibility of passing away if they got the virus, or that they don't have access. And so those are some of the things that have kind of come about as it relates to the system that has been built,
this system of systemic racism.
That's going further with that, Christle. I want to ask the viewers, those types of moves, are there any thoughts on that? Is this doable? Is this, is it realistic? Any thoughts at all on how do we move forward? Yes, Barbara Bates.
Barbara Bates, yeah. I was just listening. Reparations is such an important conversation. And Barack Obama couldn't even talk about it. But now that it's starting to get some currency, that much has been written about it, much that people are thinking about it and digging into it. Is it repair? Is it restitution? Is it truth-telling? What is it? How does it manifest itself? I just learned yesterday that the Boston Foundation is putting a wad of money down to study reparations and to have some sort of a project in the Boston area, I think, I don't know anything about it yet, to have that dialogue. So the first thing that runs through my mind is, how do we become a part of that dialogue? The second thing that goes through my mind is, if reparations is repair, what would repair look like to yourself or to Kathleen or to anybody else who is on this call?
Any comments, everyone, from the viewers?
Candelaria?
I just want to answer sort of the first part, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about the second part. We can do whatever we want to do. Money is made up. And it's one of the things I feel so frustrating is money is a made up system that we've all agreed. And in the pandemic, we saw money come forward to do things that should have been done. One of the things that stuck in my craw was the fact that the school system started giving Chromebooks to all these children who should have been able to have that every year since Chromebooks even existed. So the money exists if the will exists. And repair, if our most beleaguered citizens are made whole, and that's not only Black people, but Native people, and people all across the country who came here against their will or were discriminated against, if people were made whole, it makes everybody more whole because we're incredibly all connected. And so I don't understand when people think it's that, oh, those group of people are going to get something and then we didn't get it and they don't deserve it. None of us, we have made tremendous progress in a lot of areas, but we've also backslid, especially emotionally and mentally and politically. And when I do think that the idea that we are all brethren in this and have different backgrounds of what part our ancestry was on this, but right now in this moment in 2022, we are all together. And if any of us are made whole, all of us will be better. And repair would look like people being able to do really whatever they want to do, whether it's education, whether it's business ownership, whether it's paying off previous debts. Think about what would happen if we knew that post-secondary education was able to be free, right? And that you wouldn't have to decide you can't do it or drop out. Like there are all kinds of things that are happening now that didn't happen before. Food pantries in colleges, the fact that menstrual products are now being made free in all these venues. It's like somebody has to conceive to say free bus fares, that all of it could be free because money is all made up. And so for me, that's what's always been frustrating, that people act like it's going to be it's not magic. It's all within us. It's us looking in our Zoom screen, looking in the mirror and saying, what can we do and how can we advocate? And I just think reading the papers that we still have, there's always articles on this group doing reparations, this group is researching this group is doing that. Find something that you believe in that can fit your political ideas, your level of willingness to get involved. Some people like writing checks and they can do that. Some people want to actually give their time, but we can all do something. And this is definitely possible to happen. it definitely can happen. So.
I love that so much. I and really this your comment echoed what I was feeling was, okay, well, what happens? Say if okay, we snap a finger and funds went out, got dispersed. Now what? There's still a scar, there's still, what about that? Well, you got to pay out. And so, can we move on now? Those types of repairs to our society are much more they're much needed, and I'm so refreshed to hear that. Anyone else have another comment?
I just want to say that we also should really think about the fact that many of the things that people make money, these companies make money off of, are things that should really be free. I don't think that healthcare should be a money-making industry. I don't think that education should be a money-making industry. So it's really just changing how we, see things, just to piggyback on what Candelari was saying, that, this is a power money driven society. And we really need to look at that, because there's only a few who can benefit from that, and who are in charge and making decisions that are not really for the best for all of us.
I have a question for the everyday person. I feel like, some of it is letting it be known, right? I don't feel comfortable with this. Just like you said on the tour, this doesn't feel right. How do viewers think that we conscientious people who care about these topics can let it be known that that we're concerned? Are there any suggestions? Besides,
Katarika had her hand up. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. No, I did not see. Katie?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Really enjoying this conversation. My name's Katie. Yeah, all of this is really, really wonderful, and it's bringing to mind, I think, a lot of the conversations we've actually been having in our youth programs at the Urban Ministry around abolition and reform. And just thinking a lot about how capitalism is really racialized, right? And what are some of the ways we can bring that back to community? Something that comes to mind for me is mutual aid efforts that I've seen a lot of folks doing, just especially during the pandemic over the past couple of years, but in these ways that are really beautiful, where people in my immediate community, I guess, like my friends who are often artists and who are a lot of artists of color who have faced loss of housing or loss of studio or a loss of ability to continue their art practices. The normalization of asking your community for help and for mutual aid and getting direct support via like Venmo or these different apps that make it easier now to transfer money. That has been really beautiful to me, like watching people that I know be able to receive funding and being really surprised and feeling blessed that their community could show up for them in the ways that systems don't, and systems have routinely shown us and governments have shown us that they won't show up for us. I think especially throughout this pandemic. So yeah, I think mutual aid has been really beautiful. I also see that a lot with the community fridge movement that's been happening in Boston and beyond. And that has been beautiful. Like that is literally people saying like, the government didn't show up, the city didn't show up in these ways that there are needs. And they came together and donated a fridge, and people have been filling those fridges. And I think that's a really beautiful example of like ways we can all engage with mutual aid, whether it's financial or otherwise. So those are some things that come to mind when I think of reparations and what they can kind of look like.
Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead.
Feel hopeful. No, it just makes me feel hopeful. I just want to say thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and it also is a testament to everyone else, right? When we read that in the paper, we just almost feel this almost sense of relief, like, because it feels like, yes, that should be happening. So not only are we helping one another, but we're also helping the community that witnesses that it's happening. So thank you so much. Anyone else I know it's 12:40. We have 5 minutes. If you'd like to unmute and
Do have another comment.
yes, Kathleen?
Everybody here can, yes, everybody can talk to their state senators and push them to advocate for the passing of HR 40. And you can also advocate on behalf of your state to get your representatives and senators to pass a reparations bill for your state and for your local community.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you very much. HR 40. Any other comments? I know it's a very deep, a very deep topic. I know when I worked on this video with Christle and contributed the music, I wept over it a couple of times. And then when I had to watch it again, it happened again. So if you don't have comments, don't feel bad. I know it just takes time to process a lot of this, but we do thank you all for joining. If there are any other comments, or Christle, are there any final thoughts for this hour?
I just want to thank everyone for coming and having this conversation with me. Really appreciate that. It lets me know that my poetry and my music, my art is working.
Thank you so much also for doing the work. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Our next Lunch with an Artist is in 2 weeks on March 16th, same time, 1 p.m. And if there are no other comments, then we'd like to close out with our community commercial featuring Frugal Bookstore in Roxbury. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome to Frugal Bookstore in famous Nubian Square. My name is Leonard Egerton. I'm one of the owners along with my wife Clarissa, and we are standing in our children's corner. Well, Frugal Bookstore actually opened in 2001. Bob Romano, who had Frugal Furniture Stores, and he had a niche in every furniture store. I came in there and I just saw all these books, and I was like, one of these days this is going to be my store. Well, we was actually in the Washington Park Mall at the time, and I worked with him, and then my wife Clarissa, she joined us, and we started a new livelihood, Frugal Bookstore. He sold us the store in 2005. We were there until 2016, where we moved to what was Dudley Square then, which is now Nubian Square. And we've been here for 4 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Clarissa Cropper Egerton, and I am one of the co-owners of Frugal Bookstore. Welcome. One of the things that we definitely want to incorporate this year in 2021 is having virtual events with authors. A lot of authors have emailed us with interest in wanting to have an event with us, so we are looking forward to bringing that to you. Sure. So right now we have our children's corner, hardcover children's books, there's story picture books here. So these are the beginner reader books here. So for children in kindergarten, preschool. Our toddler section, so we have a bunch of board books for toddlers, anywhere from 6 months, reader, young adult. Nonfiction section here. And then we have our fiction books over here. And then we get into the YA fantasy.
This is a really, really good series. This is a black scientist. His name is Max Axiom.
Yes.
So Max Axiom talks about a number of different things. Like this one is about cell phone technology.
STEM.
He's riding down the throat, the digestive system. Max Axiom.
So our section here is our children Latinx section. Over here we have our nonfiction section. We have autobiography sections against the wall here. We have history section, In the front, we have like current events. We have sports biography, music biography, and our African American Studies section.
And we have our crime and mystery section right here with one of our well-known authors, Walter Mosley. We even have some John Grisham. Octavia Butler is featured here because she's just one of the most sought-after sci-fi writers.
We also carry Bibles
And Qurans.
and Qurans as well, and we have them in English, and we have children's Bibles.
To order online, all you have to do is just go to frugalbookstore.net. It's very simple. You can also buy gift cards, and it's an easy process just checking out. Our hours of operation are Monday through Wednesday, 10 to 3 p.m., Thursday and Friday, 10 to 5 p.m., and Saturday, 10 to 3 p.m. The mission of Frugal Bookstore is to change minds one book at a time and to increase the literacy in our community. You missed it.
No.
You missed it. I'm a star.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.